For over 2,000 years, Plato's name has pretty much been philosophy. His dialogues, his ideas, his academy, they've shaped how we think in the West, like few others ever have. But what if the Plato we think we know, the one they teach in universities and we chat about in coffee shops, is only giving us half the picture? What if Plato's biggest, most mind-blowing secrets were never actually written down? Imagine them whispered only inside his school, saved for a special few. Picture a truth so powerful, so life-changing, it was thought too risky, or maybe just too easy to get wrong for the written page. Now, this isn't some wild conspiracy theory. It's a real debate among scholars. Welcome, wisdom seekers. Today we're playing intellectual detectives, on a hunt for what might be the real secret of Plato's philosophy. And no, we're not just rehashing his famous theory of forms or the allegory of the cave, though they're definitely key clues. We're going deeper into those persistent, intriguing whispers about Plato's unwritten doctrines. These are rumored lost teachings, ideas passed on by word of mouth, that some experts believe hold the ultimate key to understanding what he really thought about the soul, about reality itself, and maybe even about the divine. It's a pretty electrifying thought. Plato, the guy who mastered the written dialogue, believed his most fundamental truths were better shared directly, mind to mind. Why would he do that? What were these doctrines? And if they were real, what do they tell us about the true shape of Platonic thought? Come with me as we check out the evidence, explore the core ideas that might crack this mystery, and try to piece together the ultimate secret of one of history's greatest minds. This is a journey into the hidden heart of Platonism. Plato's legacy is huge, built on a collection of brilliant and beautifully written dialogues. Works like the Republic, Phaedo, and Symposium have been picked apart and argued over for centuries. They introduce us to big ideas like the soul's immortality, the perfect state, and of course, the theory of forms. These writings are, no doubt, the bedrock of Western philosophy. And yet, almost from the get-go, there were hints that these public writings weren't the whole story. Plato's own student, Aristotle, a giant thinker in his own right, actually mentions in his works, like the Physics, what he calls Plato's agrapha dogmata, the Unwritten Doctrines. This isn't some vague rumor. It's a solid clue from someone who spent 20 years at Plato's academy. Other ancient writers and commentators also hint at an inner circle of teachings. So, why would Plato, who wrote so much, keep his most important philosophical ideas out of his published works? Well, a few reasons have been suggested. First, Plato himself was a bit skeptical about writing. In his Phaedrus and the seventh letter, if it's genuinely his, he suggests that written words are static. They can't defend themselves or clear up confusion, and deep philosophical truth is better grown through live, dynamic conversation and shared questioning. Maybe he worried that his deepest metaphysical ideas, if just laid out on a page, could be easily twisted or made to seem trivial by people who weren't ready for them through proper philosophical training. Second, philosophical education back in ancient Greece was often a very personal thing, sometimes esoteric, meaning it was taught to an inner circle. The academy wasn't just for lectures. It was a community chasing wisdom together, as much about building character as understanding ideas. Some truths might have been kept for those who'd shown they were committed and able to grasp deeper concepts. The goal wasn't just to dump information, but to change the soul, and perhaps Plato thought this change needed a more personal, guided touch than books could offer. These fascinating clues from ancient times make us wonder, what exactly were these doctrines that needed such careful sharing? Section 2. The familiar world of forms. But is it complete? Before we dive deeper into the shadows of these unwritten teachings, let's shine a light on the foundation of Plato's known philosophy, the theory of forms. It's an idea that has fascinated and stumped thinkers for ages. Plato suggested that the physical world we see and touch, the world that's always changing, decaying, and imperfect, isn't the true reality. It's more like a shadow, a fleeting echo of a higher, more real, and perfect place, the world of forms, or eidos. Think of it like this. Every beautiful thing you see, every fair action you witness, every round object you find in this world is just an imperfect copy, a participant in the perfect, eternal, and unchanging form of beauty, form of justice, or form of circularity. These forms aren't physical things, nor are they just ideas in our heads. Plato believed they exist on their own, objectively, in an intelligible realm that we can't access with our senses, but only through reason and intellect. His famous allegory of the cave in the Republic paints a powerful picture of this. Most of us are like prisoners chained in a cave, mistaking shadows on the wall for reality. The philosopher is the one who breaks free, steps into the sunlight, and sees the true objects, the forms, that cast those shadows. For Plato, real knowledge is knowing these forms. This theory of forms is pretty radical and gives us a way to understand everything from right and wrong to how we know things. But here's where the plot thickens. What if the theory of forms, as we read it in the dialogues, isn't the last word? What if it's just a stepping stone, an introduction to an even deeper metaphysical structure that Plato mostly talked about rather than wrote about? Second, philosophical education back in ancient Greece was often a very personal thing, sometimes esoteric, meaning it was taught to an inner circle. The academy wasn't just for lectures, it was a community chasing wisdom together, as much about building character as understanding ideas. Some truths might have been kept for those who'd shown they were committed and able to grasp deeper concepts. The goal wasn't just to dump information, but to change the soul, and perhaps Plato thought this change needed a more personal, guided touch than books could offer. These fascinating clues from ancient times make us wonder, what exactly were these doctrines that needed such careful sharing? Before we dive deeper into the shadows of these unwritten teachings, let's shine a light on the foundation of Plato's known philosophy, the theory of forms. It's an idea that has fascinated and stumped thinkers for ages. Plato suggested that the physical world we see and touch, the world that's always changing, decaying, and imperfect, isn't the true reality. It's more like a shadow, a fleeting echo of a higher, more real, and perfect place, the world of forms, or eidos. Think of it like this. Every beautiful thing you see, every fair action you witness, every round object you find in this world is just an imperfect copy, a participant in the perfect, eternal, and unchanging form of beauty, form of justice, or form of circularity. These forms aren't physical things, nor are they just ideas in our heads. Plato believed they exist on their own, objectively, in an intelligible realm that we can't access with our senses, but only through reason and intellect. His famous allegory of the cave in the Republic paints a powerful picture of this. Most of us are like prisoners chained in a cave, mistaking shadows on the wall for reality. The philosopher is the one who breaks free, steps into the sunlight, and sees the true objects, the forms, that cast those shadows. For Plato, real knowledge is knowing these forms. This theory of forms is pretty radical and gives us a way to understand everything from right and wrong to how we know things. But here's where the plot thickens. What if the theory of forms, as we read it in the dialogues, isn't the last word? What if it's just a stepping stone, an introduction to an even deeper metaphysical structure that Plato mostly talked about rather than wrote about? Scholars, especially those from what's called the Tübingen school of interpretation, argue that these unwritten doctrines don't necessarily cancel out the theory of forms, but actually give it its ultimate foundation. They suggest that the forms themselves aren't the absolute final principles of reality. Instead, they too come from something even more basic. The dialogues might even hint at this. For instance, in the Republic, the form of the good is described as being beyond being in importance and power, the source from which all other forms and all knowledge and truth get their existence. Is this form of the good pointing towards those unwritten higher principles? Could it be that the written dialogues were designed to make sharp readers ask more questions, to seek further, to get them ready for deeper oral teachings about where the forms themselves came from? It seems the familiar world of forms might be waving us towards a reality that's even more mysterious and fundamental. Okay, so if Plato did have unwritten doctrines, what were they actually about? This is where the scholarly detective work gets really intense, relying on bits and pieces, testimonies from Aristotle and later Platonists, and very careful rereadings of the dialogues. The general agreement among those who support the idea of unwritten doctrines, like the Tübingen school, points to a highly abstract metaphysical system based on two ultimate bedrock principles. The one, to en, to hen, and the indefinite dyad, y aoristos dias, he aoristos dias. You won't find these terms explicitly laid out and named this way in most of Plato's well-known dialogues, which is exactly why they're called unwritten. According to this reconstruction, the One is the ultimate principle of unity, identity, stability, and clarity. It's the source of all form, order, and goodness. It's seen as totally transcendent, maybe even beyond the form of the good mentioned in the Republic, or perhaps identical to it at its highest level. Opposite to the One, but also somehow coming from it in a complex way, is the Indefinite Dyad. This is the principle of multiplicity, difference, vagueness, and unlimitedness, often described as the great and the small. It represents a kind of raw, shapeless potential that by itself is chaotic. The key idea here is that the entire structure of reality, including the forms themselves, comes from how these two primary principles interact. The One acts on the indefinite dyad, imposing limit, order, and definition onto its natural shapelessness. From this interaction, the world of forms is born, each form being a specific, ordered, and unified expression that comes from this play between unity and multiplicity. For example, the form of beauty would be a particular instance of the One's unity defining a certain aspect of the dyad's potential. Below the forms, the physical, sensible world we experience is an even further, more watered-down product of this interaction, showing even less unity and more multiplicity and change. This principle theory, or Prinzipienlehre as it's called in German, offers a kind of metaphysical origin story, explaining not just that the forms exist, but where they come from and how they relate to each other and to the ultimate source of all reality. It suggests a layered reality, with the One at the very top, followed by the indefinite dyad, then the realm of the forms, and finally, our physical world. Some interpretations even suggest this framework points to a concept of absolute transcendence, a reality so ultimate it's even higher than the being of the forms. It's a challenging and very abstract set of ideas, and you can see why Plato might have been reluctant to write them down without being able to personally guide students through their complexities. The risk of them being misunderstood would have been huge. Yet, if this reconstruction is right, it completely reorients our understanding of Plato's entire philosophical project, suggesting a deep, systematic metaphysics underpinning everything he wrote. Plato's philosophy isn't just about abstract ideas, it's deeply concerned with the human soul, what it is, its journey, and where it's ultimately headed. So how do these unwritten doctrines, revolving around the One and the indefinite dyad, connect with Plato's teachings on the soul? The connection is close and quite revealing. In dialogues like the Phaedo and Phaedrus, Plato passionately argues for the soul's immortality. He describes the soul as being related to the divine, intelligible realm of forms. And critically, he introduces the idea of anamnesis, or recollection. The notion that learning in this life isn't about picking up new information, but about remembering truths the soul knew before it was born into a physical body, back when it lived in the presence of the forms. The unwritten doctrines potentially add another dimension to this. If the One is the ultimate source of all reality and goodness, then the soul's journey of recollection isn't just about remembering the forms. It's about climbing towards this ultimate principle. The philosophical life, then, becomes a process of purifying oneself and turning inward, away from the distractions and illusions of the sensible world, the realm heavily influenced by the indefinite dyad's multiplicity, and towards the unity and truth embodied by the One. This viewpoint can shed new light on Plato's famous allegories. The allegory of the cave, for instance, isn't just about moving from perceived shadows to the forms. The journey out of the cave, towards the sun, often seen as the form of the good, could symbolize the soul's tough path towards the One. Similarly, the charioteer allegory in the Phaedrus, which pictures the soul as a charioteer struggling to control two horses, one noble, representing spirit and reason, and one unruly, representing appetites, can be seen as the soul's internal fight to get its own parts in harmony. This harmony is vital to direct its flight upwards, towards true being, which, in the context of the unwritten doctrines, would ultimately be the One. The Unwritten Doctrines might also help explain why mathematics and dialectic were so important at Plato's academy. Mathematics, with its focus on abstract, unchanging truths and ratios, could have been seen as a crucial first step, training the mind to move beyond the sensible and grasp the intelligible principles that structure reality, principles ultimately flowing from the one and its interaction with the dyad. Dialectic, the tough process of philosophical argument and clarification, would be the highest method for gaining intellectual insight into the forms and perhaps even catching glimpses of the ultimate principles themselves. So, these secret teachings potentially offer a more complete roadmap for the soul's salvation and its return to its divine origin. They suggest that Plato's ethics, his theory of knowledge, and his psychology are all deeply tangled up with this overarching metaphysical vision of a reality grounded in and striving towards an ultimate transcendent unity. The Unwritten Doctrines wouldn't just be an abstract theory, but a practical guide for the soul's climb. So, what is the ultimate secret of Plato's philosophy, if there even is such a thing? When we piece together the dialogues, the testimonies about unwritten doctrines, and scholarly interpretations, a grand, though complex vision starts to take shape. It's probably not a single, snappy catchphrase, but rather a profound understanding of how everything is interconnected, rooted in a transcendent source. The secret might be in the full explanation of how the One, as the supreme principle of unity and goodness, generates all of existence through its interaction with the indefinite dyad. This would provide the missing piece to the theory of forms, explaining their origin, their hierarchy, and their connection to the sensible world. The form of the good, so key in the Republic and described as being beyond being, could indeed be Plato's most public hint at this ultimate transcendent one. Mathematics, especially geometry and number theory, which were highly valued in the academy, likely played a huge role in these unwritten teachings. They weren't just mental exercises, but a way of understanding the fundamental structure of reality. The forms themselves, and maybe even the cosmos, might have been understood as being generated according to mathematical principles, reflecting the order imposed by the One on the chaotic potential of the dyad. Some scholars even point to theories of ideal numbers, different from both the forms and sensible numbers, as part of these esoteric teachings, bridging the gap between the One and the realm of forms. Why the secrecy, then? If these doctrines were so central, why not just lay them out clearly in the dialogues? Plato's own doubts about the written word give a strong answer. These weren't ideas to be passively soaked up, but to be actively wrestled with, experienced, and absorbed through tough intellectual training and perhaps a kind of spiritual discipline. The dialogues, often ending without clear conclusions, aporetic, and using myths and allegories, could have been designed to nudge the reader's own philosophical journey, to get them ready for deeper, oral instruction reserved for those truly dedicated to chasing wisdom within the Academy's community. Spreading these profound truths openly might have led to huge misunderstandings and rigid dogma, the exact opposite of genuine philosophical understanding. The ultimate secret, then, might be less a hidden bit of information and more a complete vision, a systematic understanding of reality as an ordered cosmos flowing from and striving back towards a single, transcendent source of all good and all being. It's a vision that pulls together metaphysics, how we know things, ethics, and a path for the soul's enlightenment. It's a secret that couldn't just be told, but had to be lived and discovered. So, was there a definitive, locked-away, real secret to Plato's philosophy? The evidence for unwritten doctrines, especially what Aristotle said and the arguments from the Tübingen school, is pretty strong. It suggests that the Plato we meet in the dialogues, as profound as he is, might indeed be pointing towards a deeper, more systematic metaphysical understanding that he mainly shared by word of mouth with his closest students. This vision, centered on the One and the indefinite dyad, offers a framework that could potentially tie together his theory of forms, his teachings on the soul, and his ethical principles into one cohesive whole. It paints a picture of reality as a grand hierarchical unfolding from a single, transcendent source, with the philosopher's life dedicated to an intellectual and spiritual climb towards that ultimate origin. However, the exact nature and full scope of these unwritten doctrines remain, and likely always will be, a topic for scholarly debate and interpretation. Maybe that's part of their lasting power. Plato, the master of questioning, may have left us not with a closed book of answers, but with an invitation to an ongoing philosophical adventure. The search for Plato's real secret ultimately pushes us to engage more deeply with his texts, to question our own assumptions, and to appreciate the profound layers of meaning in his work. Whether we can ever fully recover them or not, the Unwritten Doctrines remind us that the pursuit of wisdom is a journey beyond just what we see on the surface, a striving to grasp the underlying principles of reality and the soul's place within it. And that perhaps is a secret worth thinking about for another couple of millennia. What do you think about all this? Do you believe Plato had a core teaching he deliberately kept out of his widely published dialogues? How does the idea of unwritten doctrines change how you see his philosophy? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your takes and insights. If you found this exploration into the hidden depths of Plato's thought interesting, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more journeys into the fascinating world of philosophy and history. Thanks for watching.